Welcome to our deep dive into cross-dressing and self-acceptance. We're looking at this article by Jenn der Bentson, and it asks this question that I thought was really, really interesting. Does a cross-dresser have to go out in public to, feel fulfilled?
Yeah.
Is that the ultimate goal?
It is a really interesting question, and Benson's perspective is particularly interesting, I think, because they identify as an at-home only cross-dresser.
Right.
So, it's not everyone who enjoys dressing up who wants to share that part of themselves publicly, right?
Right. And that's kind of what I found so interesting about this piece. It's like it challenges this assumption that public expression is the only way to truly embrace this part of yourself. So listeners, we unpack Benson's ideas. I want you to think about, where do you fit on this spectrum?
Yeah. One of the first things that I noticed about this article was how Benson really emphasizes that cross-dressing is not this monolithic experience. It's really a spectrum.
Yeah.
And you have some people finding fulfillment in private and others seeking that public expression, and then many falling somewhere in between.
So it's not just, black and white public or private. Like Benson even gives examples like hotel getaways or people who might venture out occasionally, but aren't necessarily part of a large visible community.
Exactly. And Benson actually talks about how they've only shared this part of themselves with their wife. And they haven't really felt this strong urge to be publicly out, even though they're aware of, these more vocal online communities.
That's interesting. So it seems like for Benson, cross-dressing is more about personal exploration and finding this sense of self at home rather than, seeking validation from others.
Yeah, precisely. And I think that's one of the things that makes Benson's article so liberating for a lot of people, is that it directly challenges this idea that there's a right way to experience cross-dressing. They even use the word bullshit when addressing this idea that staying private somehow makes you less than.
Wow. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're saying, hey, there's no hierarchy here.
Yeah.
Your experience is valid whether you choose to share it with the world or keep it to yourself.
Exactly. And this kind of ties into a larger point that I think Benson makes, which is that, cross-dressing should be about what brings you joy and fulfillment and not about, meeting some kind of societal expectation.
Yeah, there was this quote that really stuck with me. It says, it doesn't have to be something that is in others' faces, which is such a powerful reminder that we get to define our own experiences,
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's important to acknowledge, I think, as Benson does, that both public and private expressions come with their own challenges. For some people, the risks and anxieties associated with, public expression might just be too great, while others might find the privacy of home kind of limiting.
So it's not about saying one is better than the other, but recognizing that each path has its own set of complexities and consideration.
Right. And Benson even highlights that these desires and comfort levels can change over time. It's not a static thing. What feels right for you today might evolve as you gain new experiences and perspectives.
So there's this room for fluidity. That's really interesting. I mean, it suggests that our relationship with cross-dressing, or really any form of self-expression, can change and grow as we do.
Absolutely. Benson is really encouraging, a journey of self-discovery here and emphasizing that personal fulfillment, whether it's found in private or in public, is ultimately what matters. One thing that I found really interesting was how Benson pointed out that cross-dressing doesn't have to be this big political statement. It's not always about making a stand about gender identity or challenging societal norms.
Yeah, that's so true. It's kind of refreshing to hear someone acknowledge that it's okay to keep this part of yourself private and just enjoy the experience without, feeling like you have to explain it to everyone or justify it to the world.
Right. It's like we're so conditioned to think that if we're not shouting about something, it's not real or it's not valid. But Benson's saying that's not the case at all.
And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with being public about it either.
Right.
I mean, the people who are out there invisible are doing incredibly important work in terms of advocacy and raising awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think Benson's perspective just adds another layer to the conversation. It's about recognizing that there are different ways of expressing this part of yourself, and they're all equally valid.
Yeah, it all comes back to finding what brings you joy and fulfillment.
Right?
Whether that's something you share with the world or something you cherish in private.
Exactly. And Benson even mentions feeling lucky that dressing at home is enough for them. They acknowledge that it comes with fewer challenges than navigating public spaces where you might face judgment or discrimination, or even concerns about safety.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
But they also make it clear that staying private isn't necessarily the easy way out, right?
Right. It's not about one being easier or harder than the other. It's just about recognizing that both paths come with their own unique set of complexities.
So listener, if you're exploring cross-dressing, Where do you find yourself on this spectrum? Are you content with expressing yourself at home, or do you feel drawn to sharing this part of yourself with the world?
And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's about honoring your own journey and what feels authentic to you. And as Benson reminds us, those desires and comfort levels can shift over time.
That's such an important point. I think we often get caught up in this idea that we have to figure it all out and pick a lane and stick with it. But life is rarely that simple.
Yeah, embracing that fluidity and allowing yourself to change and grow as you explore this part of yourself can be incredibly liberating.
It takes the pressure off, right? Like you don't have to have all the answers right now.
Exactly.
Benson even talks about how our desires can evolve as we go through life, as we have new experiences and encounter new perspectives. What feels right for you today might not feel right for you tomorrow.
And that's okay. That's all part of the journey.
There's this quote from Benson that really stuck with me. They said, "It's not about what makes other people happy or how they will judge you. It's about what makes you comfortable and allows you to express whatever parts of your persona that make you most happy."
That's so powerful. It's about reclaiming your autonomy and defining your own experience on your own terms and prioritizing your own well-being.
It's like they're giving us permission to let go of that need for external validation and just focus on what feels right for us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a message that resonates far beyond the topic of cross-dressing. It's about self-love and self-acceptance and the freedom to create your own path.
Exactly.
So listeners, we kind of wrap up our exploration of Benson's perspective. I want to turn it back to you. What are your biggest takeaways? What resonated with you and what new insights have you gained?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's been a really thought-provoking conversation, don't you think? Like, Benson's perspective really got me thinking about all the different ways people express themselves and, especially those desires that maybe don't fit in with like what society expects.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they're encouraging us to look beyond the surface and, really consider like the individual journeys involved and all the internal struggles and personal triumphs that shape how people, express those parts of themselves.
And I really appreciate how Benson doesn't shy away from, acknowledging the challenges that can come up with, whether it's public or private expressions of cross-dressing. Like they talked about the anxieties that can come up in public spaces, the fear of being judged and just the effort it takes to present yourself in a way that feels authentic.
And on the other side, they also talk about how staying private, sometimes can lead to feeling isolated or like you're not fully embracing who you are.
It's definitely a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah.
Which I think makes their message about personal fulfillment even more powerful.
Yeah.
It's not about fitting into some predetermined box, but really about discovering what feels genuinely right for you.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that while we've been focusing on Benson's experience, this is just one perspective among many. There are so many different ways that people experience and express their gender identity, and cross-dressing is just one piece of that puzzle.
So true. So listener, as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to leave you with a few thoughts to kind of take away from this conversation.
First and foremost, your journey is your own. What resonates with you might be completely different from what resonates with someone else, and that's perfectly okay.
And, don't be afraid to explore those desires and feelings that you might have. Whether it's cross-dressing or any other form of self-expression, creating a safe and supportive space for yourself is so important.
And, it's not about having it all figured out right away. It's a journey, not a destination. Allow yourself to grow and change and embrace the evolving nature of your experiences.
So if this conversation sparked something in you, if it made you question things, or maybe reconsider your own relationship with self-expression, I hope it serves as a starting point for your own exploration.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into cross-dressing and self-acceptance. We hope this has given you some food for thought and maybe even a little inspiration to embrace your authentic self.